for the expanded bio, I was born in Marin County and raised in Sonoma, the town. And that's all you need to know. 70 years ago. This is about ancient China. At the beginning of the era of the warring states, the sage Kung Fu Tzu spent much of his life warning the chamberlains of the evil effects of bad government. By and large, they ignored his advice, promoting him instead and trying to silence him with appointments to high office, most of which, to his credit, he refused. Once he went into exile in protest, he seemed to have little effect on the behavior of the dukes who ruled the states. When he died, he was ignorant of the effect of his life. Quilting Bee, August 1950. The women of the church gather in the parsonage to make a quilt. Beneath the cotton bunting stretched on a light pine frame, surrounded by a stockade of nylon-clad legs, their children play under the darting needles gleaming in the afternoon light of Northern California summer. The pastor's old copy of the Hebrew Scriptures reveals a text that I, newly literate child, see as the mysterious handwriting of God or some stern angel. Placid heat ameliorated by a noisy electric fan amid quiet games in the buzzing afternoon, droning voices of amiable gossip, talk of flowers, annual and perennial, the latest fashions, lulling some of the younger ones to nap. Softly, the certainties of faith are never questioned and float like dust in that warm, still air. Notions as childish as we who play with our crayons, puzzling over ancient pages or napping quietly with heavy heads on the dusty carpet. Little hands folded under heavy heads like angels. A quilt is quietly coming into existence through the silent effort of the several needles glistening in the afternoon light, a magical composition of colored patches and swatches. While half a world away, uncles, sons, brothers, and fathers are killing and dying at the Busan perimeter. Forgotten. Dim and dusty antique shops harbor old boxes crammed with postcards, photographs, tiny bits of information concerning the lives of the long-dead strangers who stare out at us, seeing only a shrouded photographer. What half-truths are contained in their brief messages that sport the postage of long-dead empires? Who is John, Mary's husband, brother? What of the address? A house refitted with modern plumbing, once lit by gas, now inhabited by a higher class of citizen. Personal computers in place of the stereopticon, compact discs in place of the pianola. Minor mysteries will never find solution. Obscurity locks up any revelation. Although it is all there in the archive, there is no need to expose their gentle existences. Sequence from an old newsreel. A horse is standing in a rubble-strewn street before a backdrop of ruined buildings. The creature is not looking at the camera, that is, us, but stares off to the right of the composition. No people appear in the short sequence. Maybe they're all dead. Maybe the photographer has told them to stay out of the shot. With war's turmoil present, the horse seems like the bone-weary adult society the humans have created. Did the photographer live to see the end of the war? Series of haikus. Time calls wetly on a sidewalk of autumn, while youth spent its speed suddenly. Eucalyptus leaves whirling in the afternoon storm, deadly distraction in the one-way traffic. Evening light in the west, a wall covered with birds, all one needs for joy. Flaming light glowing in the west, a wall covered with swarms of sparrows. Climbing up a hill, ruining tiny landscapes, I glimpsed red mushrooms. When I was a child, an adult told me that I will suffer death. Pigeons hustling over a morsel of bread. They seem almost human, frantic. Okay, this is televised reparation. Chanting in a quavering voice in a language unknown to me, Sachem adjusts necktie and finally abandons attempt to conceal tears. People around him wipe eyes and touch each other's shoulders with gentle fingertips. Young men and women, suddenly more holy than yesterday, are standing solemnly. Old people close their eyes and remember the stories they heard as tiny children. A white man from the museum who has brought the pole back after so many years stands with a red blanket over his shoulders in the heat, beatified. Elders bring a forked stick. The Mahoktali is placed aslant for all to come and touch. At last, after so many years, in a reservation, so many walks from the old hunting ground. Municipal Cemetery. This is about Sonoma. I spent most of my childhood living across the street from this oldest cemetery. In summer we used to play, dazzled by the colors of myriad wings, fields humming with insects, the dead lying in lichen-spangled mausoleums bearing names and dates carved in formal calligraphy, and the old graveyard shaded by mossy oaks. Sagging, sunken ground, receptacles of dead leaves, 19th century bones, now nearly biblical earth, some marked with granite careful calligraphy, or carved weeping willows and angels. In a section on the west side, the frames, the names and numbers of their regiments, nearly illegible, burnt into the weathered wooden planks. Songs of finches, sparrows, and robins, whispering shrieks of hawks, and a clatter of crows celebrated our sun-blasted afternoons. The town napped in the heat while grown-ups earned our bounty. Living among the derelict tombstones flung down by vandals in the night, the largest oak, with branches thicker than I was tall, served as our plaything. Rope tied to a massive branch, stuffed burlap to ride, thrilled and endangered, and solace. Once alone, I spoke to her of my despair, wet, frosted winter when ghosts seemed more at home with skies, a shade of steel and clouds of mist with every living breath. But we grew up and the town paid men to clear the undergrowth, set the stones right. Our world was transformed into a pedal park where airmen from Hamilton, wearing chrome helmets, formed, played taps, and gestured with artificial rifles one Memorial Day during my junior year at Sonoma High, while flags rustled like branches, while the birds still chirped and fluttered. The old oak and the ghosts still remain. Death Valley in January. Mild, dry air, still as empty exoskeletons of long-dead beetles, soothes the morning light after a night spent under myriads of stars, and the excited yipping of coyotes over drifting sands as golden as the hair of the first bride, forgotten at maturity. Dreams were punctuated by forgotten childhood shame, images vague, reeling, dissolving in the cauldron of censoring ego, destroying recall that might have solved all dilemmas forever, the solution of all puzzles of insignificance and reason, or maybe not. Peace and silence greets the sight of perfect, complete, impermanent, undulating horizon. The sun has cracked recklessly, seductive to living minds that have the luxury to contemplate it. Not a creature seems to violate this empty aesthetic. A day, however, is beginning and my car is waiting to take me into Furnace Creek. This one is only the old timers will remember this kind of phenomenon. It's called The Iceman Cometh in Peace. The Iceman with a big black mustache used to stop his wagon drawn by a team of Clydesdales with those impossibly huge hoofs at our house back in the days when it was not the shabbiest in the neighborhood. The Iceman wore rough canvas chaps that smelled like my father's garage when he handed out cold shards of ice to us in the August heat. The Iceman, big as his horses to us kids, would heave his blocks, dripping and transparent as glass in the summer heat, gripped by steel tongs resembling the owl's talons, into my mother's kitchen, into the icebox to cool the oleomargarine and meat, the eggs and milk and fresh carrots that would go around the pot roast along with the potatoes for Sunday supper right after church. This one's for the neighborhood, right? It's about this area around here. A normal interlude. Waiting for takeout at the Jasmine Tea House. I'm sitting at the table they used to muster the delivery orders. Etched Art Deco style glass screen hiding the restroom, depicting a blonde woman stretching yoga cobra, entrances my attention as usual. An appalling kitsch mountain background and strange pastel landscape reminding me of shavings of various types of milk chocolate. This afternoon, Robert, who comes from Shanghai, is not here to discuss American literature or the stock market while I wait. Rust and shards. Too often we ignore an old truck or automobile rusting in a field, tires gone, weeds growing up past the bottom of the windows, paint job a thing of the past, sporting perhaps the spider's spun work of art in what was once the windshield, cobwebs gracing naked iron springs, skeletons of seats, analog clock that never really kept time, home to ghosts of events no longer remembered, seldom seen, deconstructing quietly, the way one hopes it will eventually be with our own existence, tranquilly, slowly evolving into dust and shards. The new animal. They come from miles around to see the new animal. Outside the vast habitat in a variegated throng armed with digital cameras and cotton candy. The new animal is napping and the people are getting bored. Its mate saunters out from the cave in the back. We're getting excited now. The new animal awakens now, sniffs the air and moves its head. It's looking around now. It sees the throng. This is exciting. It's looking at me. 1973. I was living in the Haight-Ashbury at that time. Winter light in the city. Brilliant illumination of the backyard after summer and autumn's poison and thirst. All the moisture is on the ground. My cat, seeing her first winter, is tasting the grass, ripping cellulose and protoplasm with her beautiful little fangs, dreaming of meat. The greed and fertility of the vegetation is amazing. Grass and chamomile, feral daisies, a sterile banana tree in this corner by the fence. By spring, this will all be a tiny new jungle, snails abounding, thriving again after winter's fatal dreary dampness and chill. A sun that is really a star stands east, invisible, its clear, chill light illuminating the city. A technicolor day after a week of rain. All this buzzing, wet life in her backyard swarms in the city, so often so sad and ugly. At the first, this is called Bad Religion. At the first church of sanctification, there is forgiveness of late payments, no money down before the first miracle, blessed assurance, all the perks, including afterlife, afterbirth, confounding of all enemies, both foreign and domestic, protection from disease, disaster, dope, the walking dead, the undead, bread, wine, and fishes, alien invasion, both terrestrial and extraterrestrial. All in all, a caustic game for heretics. Pleasure centers chastely stimulated, acts of contrition cheerfully accepted for a proper remunerative consideration. I'll end with this one. Questioning corporate personhood. Did a corporation ever vote? Did a corporation ever sit up all night with a sick child? Did a corporation ever experience the travail of childbirth? Did a corporation ever contemplate suicide? Did a corporation ever starve to death? Did a corporation ever go to prison? Did a corporation ever throw a grenade into a house? Did a corporation ever have its legs blown off by an IED? Did a corporation ever die of typhus in a concentration camp? Did a corporation ever have its eyes gouged out? Did a corporation ever get through basic training? Did a corporation ever get tasered? Has a corporation ever fallen in love? Has a corporation ever been mugged? Has a corporation ever failed to reach orgasm? Has a corporation ever had an orgasm? Has a corporation ever been punked in a prison? Has a corporation ever participated in any of the sacraments? Has a corporation ever sweated blood in a confessional? Has a corporation ever walked the floor the way I do? Was a corporation ever pulled over for a traffic violation? Was a corporation ever taken out and shot? Was a corporation ever dragged out of its house? Was a corporation ever flogged to within an inch of its life? Was a corporation ever treated to a delicious meal? Was a corporation ever given a kiss? Was a corporation ever given a surprise birthday party? Was a corporation ever hugged by its mother? Was a corporation ever baptized?
Thank you for your